Have you ever felt discriminated against in a public place or in a workplace? How you would think how discrimination takes place in 2020. We would think society had made big improvements from discriminating against others since like 1960s, 1970s, 1980s. So many protests against, human rights, women's rights, gender rights, even children's rights. But every day we hear more and more in the media about someone feeling discriminated against. Either we know someone or ourselves that have experienced discriminations. We all have read or seen in the media. I see it every day about someone feeling discriminated or being discriminated, not even being discriminated against at some point. Today I used 3 sources for my speech: womenshealth.gov, usbreastfeeding.org, and georgiabird.org. So probably with my sources, you kind of get a hint of what I'm going to persuade you about. But today I am going to persuade you about the stigmatizing breastfeeding. Right. You would think that women, even to that level, have some kind of rights. I will discuss the problems of breastfeeding in public, solution on how to normalize breastfeeding in public, and end discrimination against breastfeeding mothers, and my practicalities. First of all, problems. For many years, society has considered breastfeeding in public an indecency action. Mothers have felt discriminated against breastfeeding in public. Some have to step aside in public view just so they could breastfeed their child, because society have a problem with this. There are many problems that the public feel wrong about mothers breastfeeding. In an article I read, Why Are Some People Against Breastfeeding in Public by LoveToKnow.com, they mention, according to a poll that they did on debate.org, there are 5 arguments people feel about breastfeeding in public is an indecency. First, they see that people believe that breastfeeding is a part of women's anatomy. It's not morally right for a woman to expose their breast while feeding their child. They feel this a type of nudity. Although it's a natural thing, does not make it right in public for people to be exposed or for a woman to be exposed like that. They make people uncomfortable. Others have a problem explaining to their child if they were to happen to see a woman breastfeeding another baby, that was the mother doing, making, the adult and the child uncomfortable, having to explain that to their children. These are some of the problems society have. But baby, not just mothers, suffer from difficulties when the mother feels discriminated against by society. Some of the problems a baby can face are babies are curious around the world. They like to make eye contact, especially when breastfeeding with their mother. Research have done studies that show that this is a beneficial development, cognitive development for the baby. www.georgiabird.org, that explain these researches on studies on how, the development of babies. Also, covering a baby can frustrate the baby by tossing the cover around and screaming and crying. During summer times, covering a baby can become extremely dangerous for the baby. It's hot for us. Can you imagine covering a baby? It will make it really difficult for the baby to breastfeed and to breathe at the same time, especially for really small babies. Covering could become hazardous because a cover can make a baby work harder to get oxygen and could become difficult to breathe. You see it a lot in people complaining about wearing a mask because of COVID, saying that they can't breathe. So can you imagine in the hot 90 degrees weather covering a newborn? Covering a baby while breastfeeding could cause stress not only on the mother but on the baby. They make them feel uncomfortable. Breastfeeding is beneficial for babies. research have shown that breast milk contains antibiotics and hormones to protect babies' health. Women's Health.gov states that breast milk helps babies from infections, obesity, and type 2 diabetes. So it's really beneficial for a baby to get their mother's milk. The breastfeeding for at least the first 2 months have cut the risk of SIDS, which, I don't know if you know about this, but this is a big deal with newborns. They suffocate, in the bed, either by, when they were tossing or put in the cupboard. This is really dangerous for baby, but if they breastfeed, you know, just the way they're breathing and, just having them, the mother attentive to the baby, it reduces this risk. So I just spoke about some of the problems that society as well as mothers and babies have. It would discriminate against mothers breastfeeding in public. Now I'm going to discuss solutions that could help, solve this issue. So how could we normalize breastfeeding in public? So I believe society should educate themselves about breastfeeding. There are so many health benefits for baby. If breastfeed for the first years of life, it could help babies. So if we stop to eat anytime we get hungry, right? Like I stop by, restaurant and eat, I have no problem stopping at a fast food you drive through. So why are we gonna stop a baby from eating when they're hungry? Why should we take that away from mothers, and babies? So there are many campaigns that help with mothers' right to stop shaming mothers in breastfeeding. For example, hashtag Free the Feed campaign in London. They placed 5, I thought it was funny, they placed 5 inflatable giant boobs in Mother's Day in the year, I believe it was 2018, across London skylines. So they could fight the stigma of breastfeeding in public. And you could see these images, like if you just search on the website. I got one from www.lv.com. How they place this 5 inflatable like giants everywhere, boobs, and obviously protesting, helping, breastfeeding mothers to have the rights to breastfeed their baby in public, in restaurants, at the mall, at the stores. Also, many politicians are using their political powers to campaign for nursing mothers, such as Krishanti Vignaraj, which was a former advisor of Michelle Obama, and she ran for the Maryland governor in 2018. In 2010, FLSA, which is the Fair Labor Standard Act, Action 7 amendment that every employer to provide space and time for breastfeeding mothers. Aside from space and times, some companies have lactation program to educate and counsel employees. Not only are like the employees are pregnant or employees are already mothered, but other employees to understand what breastfeeding mothers go through. Some other celebrities, they use social media like Facebook or Instagram, celebrities like Kristen Tajan, Kate Upton. Obviously they campaign for breastfeeding. You could see like pictures of them, breastfeeding themselves, their babies. Also, Jessica Alba, which has a company named Honest Co., shows support for breastfeeding mothers. In August of 2011, the United States Breastfeeding Committee officially declared August as a month of breastfeeding awareness. So it is actually a celebration. So I just spoke some of the solutions. Now I'm going to be talking about practicality. If we educate society about benefits that comes from breastfeeding, we can destigmatize breastfeeding. So according to womenshealth.gov, breastfeeding can save lives. By breastfeeding babies, 1,000 babies are saved from death each year. Also, breastfeeding doesn't cost anything. It's free. Obviously comes from our human body or a woman's human bodies. But formula, on the other hand, can cost you from 1,200 to 1,500 per year. And when I switched, because for my first child I had to go back to work after 3 months. I remember that we would finish like a can of this big formula. They probably cost me like $30 every 3 days. So it was a lot. So for my second child, I decided, no, I'm going to stay at home and I'm going to breastfeed my child. So it's one of the experiences I had, as a mother. Also, babies become less sick due to better immune system because of breast milk that has a lot of antibodies. So the healthcare cost reduces tremendously for family incomes. Breastfeeding is better for the environment. Cans of formula and bottles create more garbage per year, as opposed to just using breast milk. During the national disaster, breastfeeding can help baby's life. The baby won't become hungry anymore. So because it's obviously gonna have mother's milk all the time, studies have shown that breastfeeding reduces also risk of breast cancer in women. So not only does it benefit baby's health, but it also benefits women's health in general. If we continue to destigmatize breastfeeding, we will continue to discriminate against women. We fought for women's rights for so long that we're still gonna discriminate against that. Children can become more sick due to lack of immunity, which would children's hospital become more at max capacity. It can affect family income because of how pricey, like I mentioned, baby's formulas are. So this becomes an issue in family income. If mothers can breastfeed in public, it can cause stress for both mothers and babies in general. So why don't we stop to end this shaming on mothers and allow them to breastfeed their babies in public? Today I persuade you on the stigmatizing breastfeeding. I discuss my problems in society have. I discuss my solutions and my practicality on why we should destigmatize breastfeeding. I believe everyone should be more educated on breastfeeding. Anyone that still have questions on why we should destigmatize breastfeeding or stop shaming nursing mothers should visit usbreastfeeding.org or womenshealth.org to get more information on benefits and what we can do as a society to help nursing mothers. I hope you were able to learn about how important it is to end shaming mothers of breastfeeding in public. Let's stop today the stigmatizing breastfeeding, shaming mothers. Let them breastfeed in public for the sake of the babies in the world, which is our future in humankind. So, we need to help them and help these babies. It benefits them so much. So I hope you learned, and I hope I was able to persuade you on how to destigmatize breastfeeding. Thank you.